for this episode to get rolling. Dominic, go ahead and give us, while you're going to take the steering wheel here, go ahead and let the listeners know what's going down right now.
Well, this is the second part of the Seven Sages plus Satan. Subtitle is Dynastic Egypt. And we talk about these things, about ancient history, because it furthers the kingdom of God and what's going on with this ancient alien stuff, and people are getting brainwashed with that, and the Anunnaki, and they're basically the Apkallu, the seven Rishi, amongst others. They're the same entities that came down when the kingship descended from heaven, according to Egyptologist David Roll in his book Legends. And I have to concur with that, because after that first world age, which we covered with Gary Wayne, there had to be an angelic race here on the earth when it was first made. And thereafter there was a great flood. The earth was void, tohu wabohu. It was chaotic and dark. And God did not make the earth to be uninhabited. So the earth was remade again after Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. Left off in the first series, first part, we're discussing the seven Rishi, which is also the seven sages, just in their language. And they're also known as a Sapatarius. But the different texts, they provide us with bits and pieces of information regarding the seven sages. And they appear on earth to promulgate the Vedic wisdom. And this is the Matsya Purana. The seven sages appeared every year, and they call that the Satya Yuga, the Golden Age. And they came to instruct people in Dharma. So a passage in the Vayu Purana and the Brahmanda Purana adds that at the start of every Silver Age, the seven sages, together with Manu, they reestablished this Dharma, and the people, the worlds, etc., through the Rishi Varanas. So they do that, and this information, it correlates with the flood legend in the Mahabharata, in which, excuse me, Manu is accompanied by the seven sages and in the ship and takes them safely. So they have their own kind of like Noah thing. So another passage in the Matsya Purana, it states that the seven sages, they took birth in the Dwarpa Yuga. Excuse me. That's the Bronze Age. And wherein they conquered death and gained immortality, supposedly. So they must be referring to earthly descendants of the divine seven sages who had they had to perform sacrifices and penances to attain this liberation. So there's a passage in the Vishnu Purana that tells us that the seven sages came to earth after every year, after every cycle of four yugas, which is after the end of the Kali Yuga, which is the Iron Age, in order to teach the Vedas again. So when we put together this information, a more comprehensive picture begins to emerge about the periodic involvement of the seven sages in our civilization. It appears that the seven sages come to earth in the Satya Yuga, the Golden Age, and they stay for a time in the Tetra Yuga. That's the Silver Age, when they repromulgate the Vedas and establish lineages. Now, their human descendants carry on tradition till the end of the Dwarpa Yuga, the Bronze Age. So during the Iron Age, which is the present age of darkness, of strife and violence, the seven sages are seen no more. and the Vedic wisdom and the Rishi lineage is gradually lost. So supposedly the seven sages returned to Earth once again at the end of the age of the Kali Yuga to establish the Dharma and repromulgate the Vedas. So who are these creatures talking about, the Sapataris, the seven sages? Well, we have some kind of idea, but there's not many architectural depictions of them as a group in India. However, there are a number of sculptures and reliefs, carvings of the sage Agatistya. That's always a hard word for me to pronounce. They have survived through the ages, especially in the temples of Southeast Asia. Agatistya was regarded as one of the seven sages, or earthly origin, who led a migration from Dwarka in the south, and as such was highly venerated in southern India and subsequently in Southeast Asia, and there's a lot of influence there. So most sculptures of this entity, him holding a kamandalu or water pot, this is containing that that sacred water for a ritual purification in the left hand, and the prayer bead in the right hand. Kind of went over that with the other information. So the sacred water pot in Indian iconography looks different from the ritual bucket of Mesopotamia. So it's a little different than the ones that are being held by the Apkallu. But it serves the same purpose. In some carvings, this entity, its right hand is in the Gwan Mudra posture. And that means bestowing wisdom. And he holds a flower in the left hand. Occasionally a trident is depicted behind him. So you see a lot of people these days in pictures, as celebrities and all these other political people, they're doing mudras, hand gestures, and they get all this stuff from back in ancient times, in antiquity. Thus, a number of iconographical elements associated with this sage we're speaking about, and by extension, overlap those with the Sumerian Apkallu, such as the sacred water pot, the prayer bead, the flower, the mudra positions of the hand, the trident or the mace. This shows how the tradition of iconography of the seven sages have remained or less constant across the world, which would not have been possible if there was not an underlying truth to these legends. So the Vedic text, they talk about the seven sages are not of this world. They are the mind-born sons of Brahma. That's what they say, who came from the heavens to the earth in order to lay down the foundations of civilization. So the Vedic astronomers identified them as the seven prominent stars of the Great Bear, the constellation Ursa Major, which is a lot of us know as the Big Dipper. Their identification, there's different names. Alkade, Megzra, Loth, Fida, Marak, Dubhi. There's different names for them. And so they worship the stars and the movement of stars. And there's a binary pair of stars, the Mizar and the Alcor. In the binary system, two stars are gravitational bound to each other as they orbit a common center of mass. The Mizar, that star, and the Alcor binary system, for the ancient Indians, they symbolize a marital bond. A newlywed was instructed to look at Alcor and the Serpentaurus, the great bear, before requesting a long life for her husband and the children. The you gotta bear with me, people. I'm still dealing with a lot of stuff with my throat and etc., but I'm fighting through it. So evidently the Vedic astronomers, they knew about the Mizar Alcor double thousands of years before Castelli in the 16th century observed the Mizar through a telescope and realized that it was a binary system. So they knew about this way before astronomers. So it's not also possible that people of Africa, the Dogons, they knew about the star system, and the Vedic astronomers did too. Also, as I just mentioned, it seems that advanced scientific knowledge was not uncommon in the ancient world. So no doubt these gods, these sages, were giving all this information about these stars and etc. But earlier, we talked about Berosus. And Berosus, I want to cover him a little bit. He was a Hellenistic era Babylonian writer. He was a priest of Bel, the Marduk, and he wrote in Koine Greek language. So Berosus was a priest. He was a priest of Bel. And we're going to cover a little bit of Mantheo. He lived, also in the 3rd century BC, like Berosus. And he authored the history of Egypt in Greek. And he did a chronological source of the reign of the kings of ancient Egypt. But supposedly he wrote the reign of Ptolemy and Ptolemy 2 and 3. So yeah, these guys, they knew a lot. They kept a lot of the knowledge, which allows us now to put together who the 7 sages are and tie in all this ancient alien nonsense. So there was another Egyptologist, William Petrie, who was the father of the first dynastic race of the first time. The first time it's meaning like the first peoples, the first organized peoples, like the first Egypt. And we may get into that later on another show. But Petrie discusses the Shebtu as divine beings. These Shebtu, they spawned the first dynastic race. The same entities are mentioned as a Shabedi of ancient Babylon, whose patron god was Enki Satan. And like the Shebtu, these Shabedi taught mankind the forbidden knowledge of heaven. So this Mirren and Enoch, the angels who taught humankind forbidden knowledge of heaven. What is interesting about all this is the Shebtu consisted of 8 divine kings, plus Satan. And researching this, the Anunnaki and Apkallu, the 7 Rishi. Now we have 2 new words now. 2 new words that identify them. The Shebtu and the Shabedi. One from ancient Egypt and one from Babylon. Same creatures, same 7 sages. But even if you read the Anunnaki stuff, it talks about even them believe they came from a creator. And they call their creator being Kemasata. So they can call it whatever they want it, but every knee bends on the name of Jesus Christ, so do these creatures. So the 7 sages throughout various cultures, and of course Satan was part of these schemes and what was going on. For example, the seven sages, enlightened beings, who are said to have been born once again of the mind of the Brahma, the creator. The sages are said to continue to guide humanity through the 4 yugas. So the Shebtu called their creator, as you know, Kim Sata. And the Hindus knew their creator as Brahma. Same entity, man, just different vernacular. So during the first time, this first civilization, Egypt, as a group, was formed. They formed a group known as the followers of Horus, the 7 sages. These were the preservers and bearers of this knowledge. They eventually founded a group of astronomer priests that guarded the Atlantean knowledge, their religion and their technology for millennia after the deluge. And they eventually spawned this snake brotherhood. So the Shebtu and the Shabedi, they were recorded as being described as long-headed serpentine distinction, known as the Ursa or Watchers. The Watchers were intermediaries between humans and the Nerder gods, NTR-gods. Now, when you look at pictures of, for example, Akhenaten on the internet, you see his long serpentine head, and the other ones they got this head covering with the long serpentine heads. These rulers, their genetics were washing down from these watchers, from the Shabedi and the Shebtu, but they still featured the snake qualities, the slanted eyes, the pointy chin, and the long elongated head. Go take a look at that after the show if you like, or do some research. It's very interesting. So these snake order priests appear to be akin to the semi-divine order of Enoch, the evil, or also known as Oannes, who led these Anunnaki down from Mount Hermon. So there's a scholar, Lubitz. He believed that the demigods or priests were the original pharaonic civilizations, teaching them the ancient knowledge. Now, Osiris was a serpent king god. Now, this also ties into just as Quetzalcoatl was a serpent god, the civilizer and teacher of the 7 sacred sciences of Central America. So now Mantheo, circa 250-300 BCE, he mentions that ancient Egypt was divided into 3 great eras: the reign of the gods, the followers of Horus who migrated from somewhere to Egypt, and lastly, the dynastic reign of the pharaoh kings, which began around 2950 BCE with Menes, Namer, and was likely named for Menes. So Namer was likely the name for Menes, just so you can get that. He was the first human king of Egypt, according to Berosus and Mantheo. So see, they're being bred down, now they're getting to human form. So Mantheo wrote the 3 books I mentioned. First was the reign of the gods and the kings, ending in the 11th dynasty of the mortals. Mantheo was commissioned by the first Greek rulers of Egypt, after Alexander and Ptolemy I and II. So Berosus' works, he extracts Mantheo's survived works through historians such as Josephus and other writers. He compiled the serious. His writings were serious in nature, and he wrote about the reign of the gods dating back 10,000 years before the flood. So that equates to 14,000 BCE. So based on this information, this is a time of Göbekli Tepe and the worship of the sky gods. Now, if you look closely at Göbekli Tepe, there's some T-shaped pillars that have no head, just arms and 6 fingers.
Isn't Göbekli Tepe, however you say it, isn't it like protected by the government and not allowed to excavate it anymore?
I don't know. I haven't heard much about. I heard they were.
You can't dig anymore.
They found another one, Quran Tepe. It's older.
Wow.
So this is way back. This is around the time of the Younger Dryas impact that people hypothesize that some kind of comet blew up in the atmosphere, which caused all this chaos. So it could be possible that's what happened. So also Gary Wayne suggests that these people at Göbekli Tepe were the day 6 people, part of that line before Adam, and that's probably true. So this period was immediately following after the Ice Age, and this period also includes after the reign of Ptah, who reigned for 12,300 years. So the gods reigned for a total of 24,300 years. Now back to Mantheo. He was a priest from the order of Heliopolis or Alexandria. And Mantheo's literature was popular amongst the ancient Greeks. Etchings were found in the temple walls of Seti, dating back to the 14th century BCE. And the Palmyra stone dates back to 2400 BCE. And that's located in Sicily. It's a testimony of Mantheo's account. Now, the Turin Papyrus begins with Ptah at 12,500 BCE. Its list is it's a list of subsequent rulers. It's identical to Mantheo's account, and also was dated back to 1250 BCE. So these Egyptian mythology notes, the surviving post-Diluvian companions of Horus, they were salvaged and transported with them. And the first time, there's great knowledge from across the Sea of Egypt, India, and China. So all this knowledge was being spread by the 7 sages, right? So the order of the 7 sages after the flood, and about a distant island, they were known as the builder gods, or senior ones, and the followers of Horus. So there's a professor, Raymond of Manchester University, and he says that the builder gods, how can I say this? They immigrated from a far off place, and he says Atlantis, also known as the Lords of Light, that fled destruction, recreating a new age of gods. So the 7 sages are also with this are credited with designing the Egyptian monuments. This according to the building text, and likely the same group Osiris belonged to. See, so all these names, and they're all the same creatures, man. They're all associated. And we go back to Egyptologist David Roll. He says also that the Shebtu were indeed, they were the divine builder gods. And the order of priests created as the brethren of the 7 sages, and likely led by Enoch the evil, Oannes. So this brethren is identified as the offspring of the 7 dark angels, the sages. Also, Roll, he pointed out that Egyptians knew the original Shebtu as a heavenly Anunnaki, So there you go. The Anunnaki, they equate to the 7 dark angels. There's nothing good about these entities. People out there spewing this Anunnaki nonsense. All that stuff will lead you to a one-way ticket to the burning pit of hell. And in Sumer, this gentleman named Samuel Noah Kramer noted in his work, History Begins at Sumer. He says Sumer was visited by 7 divine beings from the sea who were half fish and half man. These entities were commissioned to teach early civilizations to the Sumerians. So there you go with your oldest written thing in whatever in the world before the Bible, the Sumerians cuneiform. Well, it all came from it all came from these dark angels, and that leads to Satan. So they were taught the sciences, the writing, the mathematics, and building, and of course the requisite of laws and so on. Now, this whole fish god thing, we know Zeus is depicted as a human form with a fish tail. Maybe Poseidon fathered these entities, right? Also, the avatar of Vishnu was also a fish god. Now, Poseidon, we may do a show on Atlantis, but Poseidon, if you look at the late David Flynn, he was a very, very smart man, and he died before his time. That's unfortunate because we could have used him for a lot of information that's going on now. But according to the Macedonians and David Flynn, they mentioned that Dagon, the fish god, was associated with Poseidon. Same entity. And if you read Derek Gilbert's book, The Last Clash of the Titans, this is something no one's ever put together, but I did. Derek Gilbert mentions in his book that he believes that Dagon and Shibiaza, or Azazel, one of the fallen angels that taught the illicit knowledge in Enoch, were one and the same. So when you tie in Derek Gilbert's work and the late David Flynn and the ancients, Poseidon was Shibiaza. Think about that. That is wild. That is wild. It really is. Shape-shifting dark angels. So reflecting back to the Babylonian kings list, the whole 8 kings, these were Atlantean-like kings known as the Poseidon kings. See, there you go. Offsprings of a fallen dark angel. Now the other entity that is venerated by some, Enki, was also a fish god. Of all the waters like Poseidon, his counterpart Enlil was the god of the air. So there's an anthropologist, Hermain Dieterlin. He noted that ancient Babylon was indeed founded by fish gods. And in Mesopotamian mythology holds that life was brought to the world by these sea creatures known as Oannes. And interestingly, in the Mayan language, it means he who lives in the water. The alternative appellation for Enoch the evil was Uani Adapa. And for Berosus, it was Oannes. Now, this is according to David Rohl. David Rohl is well studied. So Enoch, if you recall, was the founder of the mortal order of the Nephilim 7 sages. These were the Atlantean companions of Horus, spoken of by Berosus, the high priest of Enki. And going back to Kramer, he mentions that Oannes was the leader of the fish gods. This was likely the angelic Oannes, with whom Enoch was also directly associated with as a high priest of this fish bull snake cult of Poseidon. So these fish gods, they were renowned in Sumerian lore for great wisdom. And they had all this knowledge and skills of matters of state affairs, architecture, engineering, and whatever building. So I want you to know that these are the same builder gods known in India, Egypt, and around the Antediluvian world. Period. There's no mystery. There's other shows. One guy out there does shows about Egypt and who built them and all this stuff. Read a book, man. Read a book. It'll tell you who they were. This is coming from the ancients. This is coming from Berosus, Mantheo. It's all in there. So it was Enoch Oannes who brought the giants Nephilim and Anunnaki down from Mount Hermon to intermix with the Day 6 people. And it was the same Enoch Oannes who brought the antediluvian kingship in partnership with the dark angels. What I find interesting is each of these Nephilim kings, they were paired up with a sage. And perhaps later with the earthly-led sages led by Enoch the Evil. These were the king and the priest partnerships of the dragon dynasties. And these are also depicted in the allegories of the Grail that included King Arthur, the great wizard also Merlin, and the long-haired Merovingians, who were renowned as the fisher kings. So when you look at these figures such as Enoch, Hermes, Thoth, and Mercury, they're considered counselors to the ancient antediluvian kings. These entities also, they did possess, they say, the secrets of the heavenly knowledge, and they were said to be intermediaries between humankind and the gods. So this Thoth creature is also known as Hermes and Mercury, Odin, some depicting him as a bird head and as a man, and this and that, and Hermes and the pillars of Lamech and the buried archives under the Sphinx and the pyramids and all this stuff. This Thoth thing was nothing but a dark angel, a shapeshifter. If it looked like a bird and then a man, it's a shapeshifter. It's a demonic dark angel, period. So these 7 sages of India and Egypt and Sumer are the same snake brotherhoods. And there's many studies on this with scholars who go through all this ancient history and the mysteries of it. But Peter Whitfield, in his book Astrology, a history, wrote the Sumerian conceptions concerning the astral kingship, the divine knowledge and the science, as well as the study of these ancient entities. These entities were well studied in the omens, and they were a group of divine teachers, and they say they had created the 10 Nephilim. Excuse me, let me get a slurp. They created the 10 Nephilim kings. And they're also known as the ring lords, listed by Berosus in the king's list. So now you know where Lord of the Rings comes from. So there's a few of them I'll name. It named Gilgamesh, Upnatishtim, and Ziusudra. Now there were mortal 7 sages that survived the flood, and that's when they later partnered with Hermes, Thoth, Mercury, same entity, just different vernacular, and Nimrod at Babel. Now, if you look at the Quran, it names 2 dark angels, Harut and Marut, that taught witchcraft to the people of Babylon. So we wonder if this connects to the Rigaveda storm god, Marut, to the Quran, the same dark god. And the Zoroastrian, it records that Yima, as one of the post-Diluvian survivors who taught civilization and enforced the banishment of the giants. That's pretty crazy. So they were getting rid of the giants. So the words, how can I say this? The words of these angelic the sages, they were copied down by this Hermes, Thoth, Mercury, Odin, whatever. And like I said earlier, they were stored away. And some say it was stored away along the Nile River in books. Some say under the Sphinx, some say under the pyramid. These antediluvian secrets are said to be also stored away in the Chamber of Archives or the Hall of Records somewhere in ancient Egypt. But who knows, right? I mean, no one's found them. But we can conjecture. And Hancock suggests that the Rosicrucians, they are a Theosophist society, and Freemasons that keep these teachings alive. Now, I don't know if any of you remember Edgar Cayce, but he was like a remote viewer, and he was always on Art Bell. But Edgar Cayce concluded that the same, for many Atlantean prophecies predicted the great antediluvian knowledge would be discovered in the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx at the start of the new millennium. Enoch the Evil is said to have been built 9 great vaults around the earth to save this antediluvian knowledge. He was the first master mason. He was also believed to have had a hand in building the Great Pyramid of the Testimony to this great antediluvian society. Going back to the first time, Neteru, Egyptian for the god known as a Shebtu, this god was, they were an interesting group of gods who ruled antediluvian Egypt. And this first time, the gods, demigods, and the mortals all reigned together before the mortals ascended to power, because these gods were taken out, man. So the Nephilim ruled just before the mortals. The original dynastic kings were an elite group. They were both divine and semi-divine. In biblical terms, watchers reigned at the distribution of the earth, just as the Bible recorded in Deuteronomy. These were the gods that built the ancient cities of Samaria that humans later inherited, such as Uruk, Jericho, and I postulate Göbekli Tepe. I also conjecture that these gods were responsible for all megalithic structures around the earth. The Nerder gods, which means one who watches. The dark angels that mated with the human daughters produced these Nephilim rulers, who reigned over Egypt after the reign of the gods. As the immortal spirit faded in the Nephilim, resulting from the edict of God that removed this illegal immoral spirit, the Nephilim became the evil giants described in both the Bible and Atlantis. Their mortal human hybrids are descendants of these Nephilim kings, later inherited the thrones around 2950 BCE in the post-Diluvian epoch. Swinging to Central America legends, reflecting back on the 7 sages to the Olmecs, 3000 BCE. The sages here, like the other part of the world, taught culture development. The Olmeca, as they were called in the Popol Vuh, were part of the original race of the East Yucatan. However, no one really knows what the source of the Olmecs received their knowledge from. Two researchers, Gilbert and Cornell, believe that the Olmecs were in direct contact with the Atlanteans from their book, The Mayan Prophecies. The Quiché Maya of Central America saw their fathers, all sorcerers and wizards. The Historia Chimeca recorded Quetzalcoatl preaching to the Olmecs. Albert Broussard Bordeaux believed Quetzalcoatl actually did come from Atlantis. And Edgar Casey suggested that the survivors of Atlantis escaped to Central America and Egypt. There in Central America, he postulates they formed the Central American House of Atlan, bringing knowledge and burying their riders in the Yucatan. Casey also named the 3 items that were left from Atlantis as Poseidia, Arion, and Og. Now, Og is in the Bible too, giant. Now, to add to this, excuse me, the Vatican Latin Codex describes survivors who to have hailed from Atlantis. This knowledge evidently was carried off to distant lands by the 7 sages, also known now to us as the followers of Horus, to early humanity after this deluge. Now, Carlos Gongoria, he's a former, he was a former Jesuit priest, and he believes that the Olmecs came from Atlantis, or at least their culture did, and supporting this are the Meztecs, who today still worship the Atlantean rain god Tolteca. See, so all this makes sense. The Meztecs still worship this Atlantean rain god. Where they get this information from? So the Aztecs, they descended from the Toltecs, who descended from the Olmecs. Now, the Toltecs are Aboriginal people who immigrated with the Quiché Maya, and then they united with the Olmecs. So the Tolteca were also known as Yaqui, and the Olmeca and the Popol Vuh. They're remembered as the people of sacrifices, and later became the Mexican nation. So the Toltecs were recorded as very skilled silversmiths. They say that skill was taught by Quetzalcoatl. And Quetzalcoatl to them is remembered as a civilizer. He was a founder of Chichen Itza and he was a great teacher of the Kishimaya. Now, in our family lineage here, on my mom's side, we're descendants of the Yaqui. And these are supposedly the priests of Atlantis. Maybe that's why we've had in the past all kinds of strange things happening. If you heard our show about the haunted ranch, you can see that on our Spotify, and UFOs and all that stuff. So that's very interesting. I find it interesting. So going back to Edgar Cayce, who many they believed he could see in the past, suggested that the survivors of Atlantis, they basically escaped and went around the world and passed on this knowledge. And it's very interesting how all this stuff just comes together. Now the Brahmins say the envoys were dispatched from Mu to India. Now Mu was another island that they say was a civilization that was there before Atlantis, if I recall correctly. And all this information went around the world. It went to it's very their whole thing is very similar to the followers of Horus. And this information went once again to Egypt, India, China, and all these other nations. The epic, the Hindu epic Ramayana declared the post-Diluvian India was indeed founded by seagoing creatures from antiquity. And these are known as the Naga. So mythologist Joseph Frontenrose, he calls these entities snake demons. Okay, these are snake demons, the Naga. They're like reptilians, if you haven't looked into the Naga of India or Asia. Now this in Buddhism traveled to China and from India. So there you go with your Buddhism. The Naga, they're similar to the Mayan Narcal priest and adepts that traveled the ancient world as once again as teachers of wisdom, just as Osiris, Quetzalcoatl, the followers of Horus, and the seven sages. So going back to Hancock, he identified these Indian priests as the Ascetic Brotherhood, the seven snake sages. And this is documented by the Vedas, surviving the deluge upon an ark. And these are Indian variants of Noah's flood. So there's a lot of, they have their own way of telling history of what happened. I don't know if their story is true or not, but continuing the Rig Veda hymn identifies them as divine physicians, the Avins. These mysterious creatures were recorded as divine intermediaries and guardian angels that are frequently they're frequently referred to in the Veda. They're always wandering and performing cures, and they are supposedly the sons of the sun, Sun, the warlike heroes and their healing gods. So this is that's why you got to be careful out there. People performing miracles and healings and all that stuff. These are some of these forces are dark. I'm not saying all of them are, but some of them are dark. So continuing, all this information from the Rig Veda that we cover, the Brahmas and Brahmins, and there's a lot of really, really interesting information that we're giving you here. And if you need to go back and listen to it, listen to it. But And going back to the Vedic hymns, the Rig Veda, the oldest, it dates back to 2000 BCE. Although many believe it goes even further back to like 5000 BCE. And in Hindu tradition, it represents the Vedas as being as old as creation. So they say between 8,000 and 10,500 BCE. And in the writings, it describes an underlying force of creation that exploded into something out of nothing. The Brahman. So in all, it basically goes into in whom all existing things abide. So according to, there's a Vedic scholar named David Frawley, and he says these hymns speak to ancient Indian ancestors, and they traveled across the sea from surviving a great flood. So it sounds like a lot like Atlantis again, or maybe even Mu. So the oldest Veda elements are oral traditions. They consist of I think there's four. There's four Vedas of these hymns, and as you know, they're known as the Rig Veda. What's the other one? Samaveda, Yajur Veda, and Athamura. I need my reading glasses. Athamura Veda. And so, and what this means is, with the ancient Sanskrit translated, Vedic, it means as knowledge, gnosis, and or insight, deriving from vid, to know, with rig, deriving from the meaning versus or hymn, thus the hymns of knowledge. So that's why they have all these hymns, and they read that, and they digest all this stuff from the sages. So these going back to the seven sages in India, they were commissioned to preserve and reproduce and repromulgate the Antediluvian Vedas, both before and after the deluge. So in the Vedas, it recorded the mortal seven sages learning the Antediluvian Vedas from the seven fallen angels. So see, there were seven sages, the dark angels, and then later there were the seven sages that were earthbound. So there was they kept on spreading the knowledge. And so these Indian sages, they did follow the spirit as the Egyptian followers of Horus did with the Shebtu, Enoch the evil. And this same spirit, the seven Indian sages were given these astral manifestations, such as we talked earlier about the Big Dipper, and the same constellation the Egyptian pharaohs prayed to and supposedly believed they ascended to. And in the same manner, Osiris, Isis, Quetzalcoatl, they say they ascended to Orion alongside Azazel. Now, Azazel, the fallen angel, is said to be hung in Orion. And there's so many things to about the stars of heaven, and it just keeps going and going. You got the seven sisters, the Pleiades, and it's really, we're not gonna get into the stars or that stuff today, but there's a lot of interesting stuff about the stars that's in the the Bible and all kinds of other stuff. So the just really quick, when we go back to Poseidon, he was the trident bearing god. He was always holding a trident, or depicting as holding a trident. He is known as the god who encircled the earth as a serpent, and he presided over the birth and death of ages. And he was a counterpart in the apple man Apkallu, the god of the tripod and divination of future. He was the embodiment of the serpent and the circler of the earth. And there's other pantheons that contain counterparts for Poseidon as well. For example, the Hindu fire god Agni is associated with the symbols of the trident, flames, and a bottle of water. And this Hindu god Agni is the messenger, once again, between heaven and earth. All these monsters or dark angels have something to do with bringing together the gods and mortal people, or passing along these messages. And the Hindu god Shiva is another intriguing deity wielding the same trident and associated with fire and red. The symbols of Shiva are the cobra, trident, and the phallus. And he is pictured as a dancer clothed in red. In the Ramayana, it describes the time when this great river Ganges existed only in the heavens, and supposedly Shiva was assisted by the descent of the celestial river, bringing it down from the heavens to the earth, in his serpentine hair. And Shiva had a son, the two-natured hybrid Ganesh, the god of the doorways and the beginnings. And as you know, Shiva is associated with destruction of the old to make room for the new. Often pictured upon a ring of fire, and dances, the ages in and out of existence. So the word, what's interesting, the word Shiva is an Indo-European root meaning 7, and is symbolic of the number of days in a week. Now, let's look at this now. So, according to the text of the Old Testament in the book of Genesis, God rested after a work of creation on the seventh day. After a cycle, in which creation took place, this 7 increment represented finality. Now, in Judaism, the number 7 is connected with the end of creation. Shiva is a Jewish ceremony marking the period of 7 days mourning and after a person's death. Now, the Hindu Vishnu, the preserver. This was a preserver, and another serpentine time god. It's always depicted on the bed of a coiled sleeping serpent. So more serpent imagery from these other gods. So from the Puranas, we learned that Vishnu descends from heaven and is incarnated among men as an avatar. When the end of an age occurs and time has lost its strength, as the Maitreya avatar is Vishnu, a fish who warned King Manu of this impending flood. So this Vishnu character instructed this Manu to gather the 7 sages, animals, and seeds to board a huge boat, an ark, I guess, which then tried to, what he did is he tied his body to this and using the royal serpent Vasuki, taking the passengers to Mount Himavan in order to survive this cataclysm into the next eon. I'm sorry, and after this flood, it was necessary for them to rebuild, recultivate, and Vishnu in his incarnation as a fish man provided the means by which humans could start over after this deluge. So in other cultures, they preserve records of rebuilding with technology brought by basically a hybrid god. The most famous fish man, I guess, would be Oannes, who appeared at a time when humans were living a somewhat wretched existence. And the story goes over and over again and taught them, the letters of science and arts and to construct cities and temples and compile laws and explain to them principles of geometrical knowledge. Now, touching on Dagon, which I conjecture is Shemiyaza and Poseidon, appears frequently in the Assyrian records from the dates in place of Urania Dapa or Oannes. And the going back to stars, the constellation Pisces, the fish is called in Hebrew Dagim. So the earliest records of the Hebrews in the time of the judges of Israel described the Canaanite and Philistine fish god called Dagon. So they called it Dagon, and the others call it Dagon. So, excuse me. It was in the temple of Dagon that the Hebrew judge Samson pulled down the pillars and the edifices, revenging himself against the Philistines, if you remember the story in the Bible. So Samson is often depicted wearing his lion pelt. He destroys the pillars of Dagon, an image virtually identical to the avatar of Vishnu. So Vishnu is depicted as sometimes a half lion, half man, emerges from the broken pillars during evening time, neither night nor day, and it shows some depictions show Vishnu resting atop of a sleeping serpent. This is reminiscent of the Ouroboros, encircling the youthful time god Horus, resting on top of a dual-headed Rutai, a lion god of the future and the past. That's an Egyptian myth. Again, we're reminded the two-headed deity Janus, the Roman god, who presides over the doorway and arches, and it's a dualistic of god of war and peace, the past and future, and after whom the month of January was named. These deities are associated with the entryways and arches, pillars, and doorways as time gods. Their dualistic nature refers to a transitional place in time, or it could be the endings and new beginnings. So we're going down another rabbit hole about the Ouroboros, and that's maybe something we'll get into later. But for now, we know that the Shebtu and the Shabedi, these were serpentine type of creatures that you can see in Egyptian antiquities of these ancient rulers that have that serpentine type of look.
That's right.
So the seven sages were also known as the Shebtu and Shabedi. They're also known once again as the Apkallu, the seven Rishi, the Anunnaki, and you have to tie in the Nagas with their serpentine. They were reptilians. So, and you look at Thoth, we're going to call him Thoth, Mercury, Hermes, Odin. That was a shape-shifting demon, too.
Odin is related to Thoth?
It's believed so.
The Odin, like the father of Thor, I guess he has horns, I guess, on his helmet.
Yeah, so it seems these dark angels can shapeshift.
Yeah, they're pretty powerful. I guess.
They have many faces, kind of like the cherubim of the Bible, or the cherub. They have 4 faces. Are these fallen cherub? I don't know, but it makes the most sense because when you see reliefs in the Sumerians, they have this half animal, stelas and carvings of an animal body with the head of a man, and
the Sumerians have one like that.
Yeah, Sumerians, and there's so many creatures that have a head of a bird and a head of a bull, and all this stuff is, for me, it ties into the cherubim.
Scary.
And I mean, like I said, I don't know. I mean, it makes the most sense to me what that means, but we talk about this thing, the 7 sages plus Satan, because it helps you understand those who you believe in Christ. It helps further the kingdom for you to gain knowledge on what these ancient aliens, Anunnaki nonsense, all this stuff is.
You can't even get away from it. It's everywhere. Every movie, TV show, video game, even innocent little products, stuff like that has all this seeing eye all the time. Have a bunch of chimera characters on everything. I mean, look at the cereal brands. There's like almost all the cereal are like chimeras. You got Tony the Tiger talking, walking tiger. You got the Fruit Loop bird and all these weird creatures all the time. Leprechauns on Lucky Charms. I mean, come on.
Yeah, how many of you out there knew that Samson was pulling down the pillars of Dagon?
What do you mean?
That was a Dagon temple, the fish god.
What was it said where he was at before? What does the Bible say? What temple was it?
It's a temple of Dagon, and
how is it described in the Bible though? Is there a different name for it? What does the Bible say exactly where he pulled the pillars at? Does it say the city? Anything? It has to.
It says he pulled the pillars down.
Huh.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that.
There's a lot of if you research all this stuff, you'll make more connections on what happened in the ancient past, and you can all tie this in together and discern for yourself. But all this information is from very ancient people like Berosus and Matthew.
Yeah, Matthew, we use a lot of our history on that guy's writings, but mainstream history picks and chooses which things they want to talk about with him.
Yeah, in Judges, it says in the King James Version, and it says, and Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars upon which the house stood, and which it was borne up.
Wow.
Of the one with his right hand and the other with his left hand. So that's what Samson did. These people in the ancients were worshiping all these.
Didn't they torture him too?
They cut his hair and all that stuff.
They took his eyes out.
Yeah.
Oh my God. He had the last laugh though, right? He killed everybody, but he died too, right? Man.
Yeah.
That's jacked up, man.
Well, he wasn't listening. He messed with that lady, and
he was too powerful though. He was still strong. How do you think he got the strength? How do you think this works? Because he was strong as a Nephilim when he was doing this.
He got it. He got his power from God.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm saying, like, how do you think it works? I mean, it's not magic. We know that there's always some kind of mechanism or some kind of thing God triggers? Like, do you think the muscles in his body just suddenly went to 100% usage, or how do you think that works? Because like the story of Alazar when they were fighting with David and his crew, and they were fighting one of these giants, where the lands had giants, and Alazar had the Holy Spirit over him. He was fighting with the sword, cutting all the enemies down by himself, fighting like 10, 20 giants by himself. And obviously he had the Holy Spirit. God was with him because he was, destroying all these giants by himself as a small human. But after the battle was over, for like hours, they couldn't pry his hand loose from the sword, meaning his hand was frozen and overexerted. So that would mean to me, it's not just magic. There's consequences for the power that God gave you or the extra boost he gave you, because now his muscles are completely overused. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
It's not like God can just, well, he can, but I'm saying like we kind of plays in like in these certain levels that we're not allowed to get past or something. Because if he would have made him any stronger, he probably would have died from like a heart attack or something. Because his body can't handle it, I guess. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
But that's it, people. That's thank you for listening. I hope you understand who the 7 sages are and Satan's hand in it. He led these 7 sages, the dark angels, into doing the deeds they did, mating with human women. And the picture's pretty clear now. Now you understand. Anunnaki, Apkallu, 7 Rishi, Quetzalcoatl, Naga, Shebtu, Shabedi, the first builders of Egypt.
That's right.
These are the gods. So now you know when you listen to these guys talk about Egypt, and who are these builders? You have your answers.
Yep.
Just open a book and read it and stop just guessing.
Get off TikTok. Yeah. Stop getting your history lessons from TikTok and relationship advice.
Yeah. So on this show, like I said, we're talking about these ancients because we want to further the kingdom of God for your understanding, because he says, my people perish for lack of knowledge, and this is your knowledge.
That's right.
And that's how we're going to roll, man. We're going to talk about these things. We're going to talk about, talking about cryptids and all that stuff, and we'll do that once in a while. And
yeah, some people just go too much into this. Like, it's not. Are we listening to a Christian podcast? All these people talk about are monsters, and then you know what I mean. Like, they don't even get into Jesus. They just obsessed with Bigfoot and Wolfman. It's really weird.
Yeah. What do I think about Bigfoot? That question is always asked by the Blurry Boys. I think it's a demonic entity, and I believe that
it's evil.
That's idolatry.
Yeah.
To pad your pockets. We don't do that. We're not going to put, you look at our brand and it's a cross. It's not an evil, all-seeing Illuminati demonic eye.
Yeah. Well, slow down there, though. We do need to put something in our pockets because the show does need to grow. Slow down there.
Yeah, but we're doing it. We're doing it from a biblical lens.
We still need members.
Yeah, we need members because we want to be the #1 podcast that's going to bring you antiquity and all this stuff from a biblical lens. So God bless you all, and I hope you enjoyed this 2-part series.